So welcome everybody. Our goal today is to talk a little bit more about InfoSight. We've been trying to do some pro tip series, and the idea is tips that maybe things that you don't know about utilizing tools that you probably already have available to you. Honestly, with InfoSight, we've noticed that we've been selling Nimble for over 9 years, and not many people log into InfoSight, it seems like. So
And
we completely understand, but
what did Brian say
yeah, go
yesterday? It
ahead.
was like on average, we heard from HPE one time a month, folks log in. So we want to show you why you should log in more than once a month, I think is the goal here today.
Exactly. And we really think this is a tool that can make your life easier. We understand why you don't log into other tools. You have plenty of things going on. So we're going to walk through some different use cases today. So our focus at Eagle has always been about earning trust and building long-term relationships. And I think this webinar is a perfect example of that, because as much as we'd love you to buy something like as a result of a webinar, our goal today is really truly educational. We're focusing on tools that a lot of you already have. If you do have Nimble, if you don't, then you should buy Nimble. But really, this is a free tool that's available to all of our Nimble HPE customers. So here's the agenda. We're just going to jump straight in, though, with overview of InfoSight.
All right, guys. So I don't know if everybody knows what InfoSight is, but we figure the best place to start is tell you a little bit about where it came from and what it's for. So InfoSight was part of the Nimble acquisition. HPE purchased Nimble specifically for, I mean, obviously they have good storage, but they also wanted the InfoSight analytics engine. And basically what InfoSight is a telemetry engine that they gather data from and they throw into a machine learning database and do algorithms and things against it to find patterns, right? So there's a lot of things that come from that, right? So because they take your telemetry data, they can be more intelligent in their support model, right? So you spend less time talking to a tier 1 or tier 2 person when you do call them, but they also give you this robust tool set that you can take advantage of as well as support can. So it makes your support experience better, but it also gives you those tools. And we're going to talk about some of those tools right now. So I'm going to show you how to access InfoSight if you've never done it before, and how to navigate through it. So to get to InfoSight, it's just infosight.hpe.com. You sign in with your Passport account. Most of you should already have one when you bought your Nimble. I think they force you to make one to register it. So someone should have access to it. But once you log in, you're going to click on the HPE Alletra 6000 Nimble storage section. And we're going to talk about the operational dashboard first. So that's where we're going to start. So once you land on the operational dashboard, you got a couple different sections. So in the top section, you've got a performance area for all your arrays. So you're going to see trend lines, you're going to see some IOPS numbers. And if you see anything red in here, that means you have some high latency and you might want to go investigate. So use this as your daily check-in or weekly check-in, however often you want to, just to see, okay, I can see my overall health of my environment. Another area you can do some daily or weekly looks is on the top VMs. If you know what your top VM is, and then maybe one day you log in and it's different, maybe something's happened, maybe a developer's run some code and it's slowing everything down. So it gives you that heads up, you need to go look at this. You can also see that everything's checking in, calling home, heartbeat's working. And one of my favorite sections, and probably a section we talk about a lot, is snapshots. So you can see a view of your snapshots here. How many of your volumes are protected by snapshots, and how much of it is remote? So how much of it has been replicated to another array? And we're going to talk about recommended actions later, but you get a high-level overview of some of the recommended actions. This one's showing some CPU saturation, but you can get a lot of different things outside of just host statistics. So the next area now, so once you get into the operational dashboard, you'll notice there's a ribbon at the top. So if you want to move around between these different sections that we're calling out today, there's just that ribbon. So now we're in the capacity report section. So this is a nice area if you want to see a specific Nimble array or all of your Nimbles and their overall consumption, data savings, and then any sort of trends, right? So this might be useful if I'm doing budgeting or if I'm trying to figure out how close am I on my capacity? Do I need to budget for that additional 50, 100 terabyte expansion? And also if I'm getting close to that 90% threshold, right? So as you can see in this example, they're saying, okay, hey, look, we need to get some more storage before this date or you're going to run out based on your trends. And they know this because they're collecting all this telemetry data and all this information on your array. So it makes it simple for you to just come in here, look, and make some decisions. To go a layer deeper, In the same page, in the same capacity report, if you just scroll down, you'll see a section for applications, folders, and volumes. This will give you more detailed information on if I've categorized volumes as file server or virtual server, I'm going to get specific statistics. And one of my favorite areas to look is over in the past growth days, right? So this gives me some insight into how much data is growing in my environment. So if I see, this number, like a number like this, 163%, I might be a little concerned if I'm not used to seeing that, and I'm all of a sudden gaining a bunch of capacity. So maybe something went wrong, or maybe somebody's copied a bunch of data, and now I can go investigate. The same thing with the volume section, just a little bit higher level. So now I can look at individual or deeper level. I can look at individual volume names and see their growth rates and sort and all kinds of things, and see if dedupe is turned on or compression. So you just get a lot of high level statistics in this view, which is nice to have in a quick glance.
I like also you can see how much your snapshot retention is consuming on the volume as well. So you can see the number of snaps and how much space that's actually taking, which is pretty low in the grand scheme of things. So definitely a reason to turn snapshots on.
Right. Well, and think about the count too, right? If you know you snap every 30 days, you should have 30 snapshots in there somewhere. So if you're not seeing that, maybe that's another indicator to go investigate. Okay, and another area in that same ribbon, there's an executive summary dashboard. So this will give you that high level view for management or leadership if they're wanting to know how protected am I with snapshots or this isn't going to cover backups, but if I'm doing array-based snapshots, I can give you an RPO and tell you this is how protected we are. So you can see 50% of this customer's data was in a 5-minute snapshot rate. The other 50% was in a 15-minute. Then they had a couple that were an hour and some unscheduled. So maybe this is their most critical applications. Maybe these are just some secondary workloads or some primary, some secondary mission criticals here, maybe just some dev tests right here. So nice to have something you can just give to management and show you're protected. One funny thing, Anthony and Brian and I have worked at InfoSight for a long time. They've been in it far longer than me, but never realized you could click these. So if you click at these individual ones, you can get specific statistics on each one. So if you have a diverse environment, it might be useful to look at it in that light, or look at all of them at once, and then you get multiple colored bars.
So like any good engineer, you should click around on things to see if something breaks or if you find some new hidden gem, right?
Exactly. Yeah, click on it. All right, and then the next section will tell you how long are you keeping those snaps, right? So maybe I'm only keeping those 5-minute ones for 5 days, and maybe I'm keeping everything else for a week, or a significant portion for a week, and then some stuff for 10 days or some stuff for a year, right? So another view of just how frequently I'm keeping, how often I'm snapping, and how many I'm keeping. And then the last section, you'll see how well am I prepared for disaster. So am I actually doing replication? This one in particular, they got 98% of their data out replicated. So if I were a manager or an infrastructure leader, I would want to know, I would want this report. You can go just take a picture of it and say, look, we have 98% of our data protected. Even if we lose backups, we're still covered from a ransomware attack with snapshots, as long as they don't get deleted. And then the last section is there's a recommendation section. So if you want to go more in depth on that, outside of that operational dashboard, there's a dedicated section for recommendations. And we're going to go over some of that later too. So Anthony's going to talk to you guys about how you can use InfoSight to do performance problem investigations.
I still love all the Clippy art that you got.
I had to go back, right? The retro.
Yeah. All right. So as Dustin talked about, you can click, everything is clickable. And so there's a lot of different ways to get to a certain screen. We wanted to build this presentation so that we can give you a PDF of it, and you can find your own way and navigate there. So we're going to take it from the main menu, go to VMware, and then under VMs, we're going to go to the IO contention tree map. And what this brings up is a view of all the data stores or all the volumes on the Nimble array. And we're focusing on this one that's in the box. And the reason we're focusing on it is because you can see a lot of pink in that box, which is representing a VM that has a DAVG average, which is a VMware metric of latency, showing latency. So you can see it's somewhere around 15 milliseconds. It's on the high end based on the graph below. So red doesn't always mean bad. It just means in comparison to the rest of the workloads, it is high. So for some customers, this could be a lot higher or it could be lower, but you still will have typically some red that you're looking at. So we click on that volume, we can see that, hey, there's the IOPS, there's the latency for the whole data store. It's only 2.5 milliseconds of latency. But if we click in, we can actually see the specific VM that's having issues. One thing to call out too is you might have noticed that the boxes are different size. Sometimes they're squares, rectangles, whatever that might be. And that is a direct representation of the total IO that the VM is consuming. And then in the whole data store. So you'll see on the previous slide, you might have saw that even though you had big boxes for the data store, you would see smaller boxes inside of there, and that's representing the VMs. So from here, we're going to click on this VM. We want to investigate what's causing this latency. And takes us to another view, and we'll see the graph down below with kind of looks like the Colorado skyline. And you can see in that peak that most of the latency is actually caused by blue. So out of the 18 milliseconds of latency that we're seeing, about 15 milliseconds of that is host related, which is probably not expected because most of the time, whoever owns a VM is going to come to the storage team and say, hey, your storage is slow, right? That's the problem. And this graph here can show you that storage isn't the problem. There's something else that we need to look into, and it seems to be host related.
Yeah,
so,
this is one of my favorite views because you can just quickly see where you need to go next, right?
Yep, exactly. So what we're going to do from here is we're going to click on the host at the top. That will give us a new drop down where we're going to pick a CPU contention trend, which will bring up another screen. You can see this loading right now. And there's our server that we're having this latency on, this high latency. So the Zabbix server, right? Looking at it, we can see that it's really only using 2.1 gigahertz of CPU. And you can see from the whole graph that's over last week, that you can see that it's typically pretty much the same. It doesn't look like it has times that it spikes very far above that. So from here, if we start thinking about the underlying architecture, or underlying hardware, this host server might have a 4214 processor, which is a 2.4 gigahertz processor. That means that this Zabbix server is really only using one physical core at any given time. It only needs 2.4 gigahertz, maybe 2, just to give it some headroom and things to that extent. But if we look in the top left corner, we see that this VM actually has 8 CPUs, allocated to it. And so 8 CPUs is really giving it a headroom of 19.2 gigahertz, which is overkill for what it's doing. So if anybody's familiar with CPU ready or NUMA architectures and stuff like that, you'll know that this is a problem. The way I think of it is going to a restaurant and trying to get a table for 2 is going to be a lot easier and quicker than trying to get a table for 8. And so getting a table for 8, the scheduler actually has to go find 8 cores, physical cores that are open, that it can schedule them all really close into the same timing, and that can cause delay. So you can see there's some links below that you guys can click on and read some really cool deep dive series on that stuff. But yeah, so anyway, this will lead to higher CPU ready and some co-stop issues. So another thing we might do is change the resolution. Maybe we want to see, hey, instead of a week, let's look at a month to make sure that there's not a once a month process that runs that really needs a lot more CPU. So we do that, we find our server again, and you can see the average is still relatively the same, and those little graphs are basically the same all the time. So it really doesn't seem like it does much outside of kind of the norm, since they're pretty idle. So yeah, this would be a perfect contender to lower the amount of CPU that you're giving to it.
Yeah, and just to add on, Anthony, so just like Anthony said, you might have a monthly process or a weekly process. Like if you look at the one below it, right, you can see it's a little bit darker. So it's obviously doing something during that window. And maybe it's not enough to really skew what you need to change, but at least gives you that idea of what you should look for, right? Maybe a darker one like this will say, okay, I'm consuming a lot of gigahertz at this time, so I need that extra. So don't take it away. So
yeah. Here, hold on. So I just saw, I haven't been able to read everything in the chat, but Blake just asked how we got to this page. So Blake, there's a number of different ways, and we can, so we'll show the video, we'll show how we got there on the PDF, but really what you're doing is you're getting to a host view and you're looking at the CPU contention trend. I can follow up later with you and we can show you in your environment. Actually, that's one of our call to actions. If you want to look over your environment, let us know. We can schedule 30 minutes to an hour and dig in to your environment with you and just help you use the tool. And it'll be more relevant, obviously, with your data set. So as Dustin was mentioning before, recommended actions, they're plastered all over InfoSight. Different screens will have different recommended actions that are relevant to what you're looking at. And here we can see one, if we're looking at a specific host, we can see the CPU percentage use. You can see there's a spike, memory is typically flat, but we can see over on the right that it's saying, hey, this host has a lot of vCPU over provisioning, and it's probably causing some CPU ready, higher CPU ready times than you're really wanting. And if we go to the next page, we can see, we can dig into the recommendations and actually see the details of different VMs, their usage, their co-stop, which is a problem trying to schedule multiple processors at the same time. And it's saying they're over provisioned. So it's going to help us know what to look for. You know, we took a manual approach the first time, but here's another way that you can just simplify things and go after what it's telling you might be a problem.
Awesome. Thanks, Anthony. All right, so guys, we talked about how to troubleshoot. Now we're going to talk about how you can use InfoSight to scale a workload, right? So since they have all this data about your environment, they can take these metrics and do scale for you. So I'll show you how to access that. So we're going to go through a specific scenario. We had a customer come to us and say, hey, we want to double our VDI. You know, I think a lot of customers right now, if they have VDI environments, they're probably trying to add capacity, and I don't know where to start as an engineer, right? Where do you go find all the statistics and information that say exactly what you need? Well, InfoSight has that built in. So to access it, the same way, you're going to go to Electra 6000 Nimble Storage, Planning, and then Resource Planner. And once you land on the resource planner, you'll have a couple different options. So it's not just scaling workloads, you can actually add a workload. So if your management came to you and said, we actually need to build a VDI environment, I just go get some basic metrics like IOPS and data consumption, or how much storage I need. And then I input it into there and it tells me what I'm going to need performance-wise from an array. So you can also do migrate workloads. So if I know I'm buying a new array and I know I'm going to move to that array, I want to make sure the performance is going to be there to deal with it. Usually it is, unless you're buying duplicates, but you get the point. So once you get to this page, click on the start button for scale workload, and it'll take you to a plan screen where you need to just fill in a name and then select some volumes. If you're someone who has labeled all their volumes based on what they do, you might actually be able to use the drop down for virtual desktop. If you don't, you might have to go do some homework and figure out which volumes have your VDI workloads, and go select them. But you can do the same thing. You can accomplish the same process. You just do a little bit more work. Once you have all your volumes selected in the right array, you can go up in the top right corner and add whatever multiplier you want. So this was at a 1, I just changed it to a 2, and then the capacity multiplier changed to a 2. Now, normally in a VDI environment, we know we're going to have some good data reduction. So it might not need double, but just for the sake of this exercise, we're going to double it. And then you can see in this, the total data set is 16 terabytes. So once I've inputted what I'm expecting, it's going to tell me, okay, these volumes that you selected, here's how much they consume on that array. So if you see the light teal color here, that's how much is my VDI workload. So it's not a lot, but if we're going to double it, obviously it looks like it's going to land there. But the first thing it's going to do is it's going to say, what do you already have? You have 3 different arrays. Maybe it could fit on one of the other ones. So obviously these arrays are a little bit smaller, so it's going to chew up more size on them. But it knows that it can double right here. So it's saying, okay, I could go use this array right now, no performance issues, no problem whatsoever. I could take a screenshot of this, send it to my manager and say, we're good to double VDI, just go buy the licensing and we won't have a problem. But if you do, or you notice that those numbers skew past the 100%, then maybe you're going to get a recommended option for a newer array, and they're going to give you some options that might fit, right? So they'll start with the high end and roll backwards and tell you which one's going to be your best fit. If you want to customize that, there's a filter button up here that'll let you decide if you want to if you just want to stick with Nimble, and you want to go only adaptive flash or hybrid, you can select that and see those options as well. Or if I know I need to add more headroom, I can add, customize these and push those out a little bit. It might be useful for just doing some sort of budget planning or things like that. So pretty simple to scale a workload. You can scale a lot of different workloads, and you can also add workloads, and there's pre-built-in configurations for that as well. So lots to talk about InfoSight. Anthony's going to talk to you about servers now. So that it was recently added, or a couple of years ago, they added the ability to do servers for HPE servers in InfoSight. So take it away, Anthony.
Yeah, and the servers piece is one also that probably people aren't as aware of. We've tried to let people know, and it's really been a handy addition, and it's been growing, the feature sets and things you can do with it. So this is free for all Gen 9 and Gen 10 servers. The way you get the data here is you deploy an ILO amplifier pack, which is also free. It's a VM that runs in your environment. It's an appliance. And what it does is it allows you to centrally manage all of the HPE servers that you have in that data center, in that environment. So you can manage them. You can deploy upgrades to them. It really is kind of like centralizing ILO for all those servers. And then that is the tool that actually packages everything up and sends it to InfoSight. So this screen, quick overview, quick dashboard. Green obviously is good. Orange means, hey, you should probably look at something. And red is, hey, you probably should have looked at something before and you're a little late looking at it. But you can see it shows here, like warranties, if they're expired or if they're coming up to be expired. You can see health status of servers as well. Components that might be having an issue from a CPU or fan. So a lot of interesting, quick things you can look at here. We're going to dig a little bit deeper, and for sake of time, we're only showing kind of a couple things here, but I love the details you can see about each server. Again, you could get a lot of this stuff from ILO, but if you're trying to look at multiple different servers, it might be difficult to try to keep having to log into different servers, here and there, when you can see it all in a single spot, single dashboard. So at the top, you can see we're in the server hardware tab. You can see that there's a case history, there's event logs, some other things from a wellness alert. And then under server hardware, we're looking specifically at memory. And the use case I was thinking is, what if you realize, hey, we need to add more RAM to these servers, to our host servers, but we bought them 3 years ago. I don't know what RAM I need. I don't know how, what size of sticks we actually have in and how they're populated. I could go back to the quote and try to figure things out, but here's a quick way to see that. I can see each bank that is populated. I can see the size that they're populated with. And then I can see specifics on even the, like I have highlighted there, the HP part number. So I could send, hey, Dustin, Anthony, I need more of these parts, and so that way we have the right one right out of the gates. Honestly, you could just tell us the server you're looking for and we can get the right thing for you. But I know a lot of our customers want to do some of that back-end homework anyway, and this will really simplify it for you. And then from here, we can look at firmware. I think this is another useful tab where you can see the version of firmware and version of software and drivers that you're running on your server today. And then if there's anything available and what versions those would be, that would be in the available column under the SPP. So SPP stands for Server Service Pack, and that's how HPE bundles their firmware and drivers for updating servers. So cool thing here is these servers that I took a screenshot of are part of a DHCI cluster. And so they're automatically updated and patched as part of the DHCI's one-click upgrade, where it updates the Nimble, it updates the ESXi host, and then also updates all of the underlying firmware and drivers on the host. But if you have servers that are outside of that type of infrastructure, you'll be able to see all that here, and you can patch them through the ILO amplifier pack. So that's really it on the servers. Again, there's a lot of information you can dig into. We just kept it short and sweet for this call today.
Yeah, we're still under 30. We're going.
We are.
All
I know.
All right, so just like Anthony said, right, they added server support. InfoSight, it was purchased with just Nimble support, and then they started to add more storage capabilities. So now you can put Primaras and the new Electras in there, and servers. Well, the next iteration is applications. So they want to be able to install agents on your SQL servers and gather the same statistics that they gather for your infrastructure, or relevant statistics for your SQL server, and then tie them back to infrastructure and give you this. I can do this causality, right? I can have someone come to me and say, I had an issue. My SQL developer says I had an issue today at 10 o'clock. Okay, well, I can go into this dashboard and I can select that exact time frame and then say, look at my other infrastructure statistics and say, well, it's definitely not memory or network IO. It could be some sort of storage problem, or it might be something with the CPU. Who knows? But at least now you can correlate these different data sets just by selecting a dashboard and pointing your SQL servers at InfoSight. So I think the goal for InfoSight is to continue to expand further into your data center and further into your application stacks and give you this level of granularity. And this is part of InfoSight. So you just install it and it starts collecting the data. And all you have to do is come in and look at it and then make some decisions. So I always, as a customer, I always had those battles with the development team on, they did something on their SQL side and now all of a sudden they've got an issue. Well, I would have loved to have something like this to say, here, I just took a screenshot, dude. It's not me, it's you. So it's just a nice tool to have in your back pocket.
Exactly.